Hello and welcome to the Pro14, sorry I said top 14 there, the Pro14 South African teams. This morning I asked you guys what you'd like me to do a video about today, and the Pro14 came up as being the most important thing. And yes, there will be a season preview, there will be predictions each week, that will all be coming. But the one topic that seemed fun was clearly the South African teams. So that is the Cheetahs and the Kings. So, hi, I'm Paul, the guy behind DrivingMaul, and I'm an Englishman in New Zealand, and hence why I have a kind of idea as to what's going on in the European side of things. So looking at the what used to be the Pro 12 is now the Pro 14 and the Aviva Premiership, a little less so about the top 14. But also I'm here, obviously, in New Zealand watching a lot of Super Rugby and the Rugby Championship side of things. So that's why people are asking me about these sides. So what we're going to do is we've got both teams on the whiteboard. We're going to use a green pen for positive things, and we're going to use red pen for negative things. We're going to have a quick chat as to what's good and what's bad about these sides. So, the Cheetahs. The Cheetahs now, they're a team that, when we did our Super Rugby season review, they were a team that got sort of downgraded. They didn't get as good a grade as we expected. Now, one of the reasons for that is basically their Currie Cup form. So, they are Currie Cup champions. Now, the Currie Cup is obviously the competition in South Africa that doesn't include the international players, basically, but it's a breeding ground, and it's where the Lions in South Africa sort of regrew their style, and they've made the Super Rugby finals the past 2 years. Okay, they've lost both times, but they've been getting there. The Cheetahs won the Currie Cup undefeated last season, and so we all were expecting them to come through and show a bit of that form in Super Rugby. And so they are champions, but we didn't actually see that. So whilst they are the Currie Cup champions, on the negative side is they're not putting it together. So that is their problem, is they're not putting together what they've got there. They've managed to keep their players. Historically, their problem has been they lose their players to other Super Rugby franchises, particularly the Bulls. The Bulls used to raid, in recent years, the Bulls have been raiding them for a lot of players. But if we have a quick look at their players in and out at the end of the season, they've only lost 4 players, and they've got 1 guy in who's come from the Southern Kings. So they're Currie Cup champions. They haven't put it together this season, but they're keeping their players, which is great, and is also a new thing. So I would expect the Cheetahs to actually push on and have a good season up in the Pro 14, because they're a team that have kept their players together. They've been together for a while. They're building that continuity, and they're an up-and-coming team. Are they going to challenge for the playoffs? Probably not. No. They've come off the back of a Super Rugby season. They've put their players straight into the Currie Cup, which started as soon as, well, before the Super Rugby finished, and then they're going straight into a Pro 14 season. These guys are going to be playing solidly from, February, March this year, all the way through to May next year. That's a hell of a lot of rugby to play. Now, they're not going to get hurt too much by international call-ups, even though there has been talk from South Africa in the future that they would use their Northern Hemisphere players in the Northern Hemisphere located games, because we're more used to those conditions. But I think that's something that will happen in years to come if they ever go down that route of splitting and having 2 different, or having kind of some specialist Northern Hemisphere, specialist Southern Hemisphere style or weather-ready players. So the Cheetahs aren't going to lose that many players to the internationals, which would be good for them. And not being in the European rugby competitions means they'll have some time at least to rest and recuperate some of their players as well. So they should go pretty well. Expect something around sort of mid-table, especially in South Africa. They're going to be a real challenge for other sides. But I'd give them a sort of mid-table finish. They should be sort of getting ahead of people like Edinburgh and the Dragons and those sort of sides. The Kings, well, the Kings are a different prospect entirely. On the good side, the Kings had a good season, and if they had been in the other conference, with the number of points they got, they'd have come second. They did come last in their conference in South Africa. Out of the two South African conferences, I said the other one they would come second because they were in the stronger one. So they've had a good Super Rugby. And the big thing is they've kept their coach. So he is there to build on. Now, one of the problems the Kings had 2 years ago, they basically ran out of money and didn't pay their coach or players for a few months. And that has obviously led to a lot of uncertainty there. And last year, a lot of their players left the Kings to other Super Rugby sides and to Europe, purely because of the total instability in their union. Now, South African Rugby did step in and guarantee payments and did make up those payments, so that's good. But the problem is they have this history now of being an unstable place that may or may not exist. They were in Super Rugby for a year, they dropped back out again, they came back in again, and now they're getting kicked out again 2 years later. So it's not a stable place, it's not a place where you can grow, it's not a place where people with mortgages and families are going to stay and play their rugby if they get an equal offer somewhere else. And that's what's happened again at the end of this season, is they've hemorrhaged players. Now, if you look on Wikipedia, there's a great page that shows you all the transfers in and out. And when you look at that, it doesn't look that bad. Because it has the Kings losing, nine players or so, which doesn't sound that bad. I mean, lots of other clubs have lost similar numbers. Ulster, for example, are losing 9 players also between last season and this season. But the Kings are losing 9 players, only got 4 in, and it's who they've lost. If you look at their squad, they have 1 prop on their squad. We're, 2 weeks away from the start of the season? 3 weeks, is it? Something like that? 2 or 3 weeks? And they have 1 prop in their squad. They have 1 hooker. Now, and they only have 1 scrum half as well, which perhaps isn't quite as worrying as having no props or not even able to put together a front 5. So the Kings are going to struggle this season. They did struggle at the beginning of Super Rugby, and then they came through and played much better towards the end. Let's be honest, they're not going to have the same fatigue issues that the Cheetahs have, because they're going to get brand new players in that haven't been necessarily on the grind the whole time. The problem is, where are they going to get those players from at this stage of the season? That front 5 especially is going to not know each other. So the set piece is going to be a real struggle for them. The ruck and the breakdown is probably going to be a struggle as well. They have plenty of, they have 4 locks, but one of them is brand new, just moved down from Italy, even though his name is very, Dries van Schlukwin. Yeah, whilst he's got an Italian flag next to his name, it might be an Italian international, he's coming home, let's be honest. And then they only have Cornel Hendricks is the only other international they have in the side. So they're not going to be losing players. But the problem is that front 5, as I say, are just not going to know each other. They're not going to have had the hours and hours of scrum practice. They're not going to have the hours and hours of line-out practice that you need to get good combinations working. So their real problem is that front 5. And as we all know, if you don't have a front 5, you don't have a platform. If you don't have a platform, you don't win games. So this is going to be their real struggle, is building that platform up. Say they're also only got 1 scrum half, so they're going to need to fill a gap there. One of their fly halves, I know, has moved over from the Stormers. So again, getting those combinations in their half backs is going to be important. One of the things about them during Super Rugby is they do have quick backs. They do have some scintillating play that they will cut some teams to pieces, but it's going to be, because very few of these players will have played that much with each other, because all players that are coming in, you're going to see they're going to blow hot and cold. Some weeks are going to be great, other weeks are going to be very bad. And with that lack of a front, that forward platform, they're going to be down the bottom end of the season, especially early on. They're going to need to maintain morale and try and push on in the second half of the season. They've shown they can do that. We saw them do that in Super Rugby this year. So on the plus side is definitely their coaching, and that's what's going to pull them through. So still, these guys are going to end up in that bottom group of the table. So they're going to be amongst your Edinburghs, your Dragons, Treviso, Zebre. They're going to be in that crowd down there, unfortunately. So there you go. There's my plus points and negative points. The Cheetahs are Currie Cup champions. They didn't lose a game in the Currie Cup last year, but they haven't really been putting it together. Keeping their players has been good, and we should see some more of that continuity pay off over time. The Kings, the problem with them is they've had a good Super Rugby season, but they've lost all their players and they just don't have a front five. But their coaches have shown they can build a team from scratch and get it going somewhere towards the end of the season. So there you go. That's what I'm expecting from the South African Super Rugby sides that are joining the Pro 14 this year. Let me know your thoughts as to how you think they're going to go. As I say, I'm expecting Cheetahs to be mid-table and the Kings to be down the bottom, scrapping it out. Let me know how you think, and it's going to be the years 2 and 3 where they're going to improve, hopefully, and become more of a challenge. I'm not one of those that thinks it is doomed for failure straight away. This can work, but it does need a lot of good marketing. It needs the Pro 14 and all of the teams to be putting out a good message and to continue doing so. Otherwise, people can become disillusioned with it very quickly, as we have seen in Super Rugby. But there you go. Anyway, there's my thoughts. Let me know. I'm always up for a good rugby chat. Also, remember to sign up for my newsletter. Link above on Twitter, down below on YouTube. Give it the old thumbs up on YouTube and share this with your friends so they can know about what's happening or what's coming to them in the Pro 14.